Lena?
I think this is a very delicate game, and a lot will come down to the first, let's say, 3 minutes here. So, if you build up a tiny bit of edge, you will have the upper hand when it comes to the warrior scout's timing, and you could have the option to set the tempo of ferrying in the deer or potentially harassing your opponent. So, it's imperative that you don't have a slip up in the first few minutes over here, because that can easily snowball out of control very fast. On the northern side, it is going to be DeMusliM with the Malians in red. Down south, it's also Malians for B in blue. And we're back with the English language on the game, so the free language education in Italian is now terminated.
Well, I thought that we were going to go for another language pack, but, you know, sad times for our Italian fans that are out there. I've spilled all the spaghetti.
Mamma mia.
Mamma mia, indeed, as they say. But here it is. Mirror start in every single way here, Lita. So far, looking pretty darn standard for Malian's opening.
The only major discrepancy that you can find is that the front of B's base is a lot more open than the Muslims. Both of them have back gold mines, but Demu's forests are split behind and in front of his town center as compared to B, who doesn't really have a lot of things in front of his base shielding him.
Yeah, that map gen is at least helpful in the way that you have two forests or two bunches of trees that are split, one behind you, one in front of you. So yes, you can open up and actually just start with the one behind you for DeMusliM. You have flexibility with it, but here for B, both of them are in the back. They're a bit more secure. One of them is a bit more distant, so you have some flexibility in that way. However, the downside of it is that, like you say, it leaves you open from the front side and being picked off early on, which is something that we're really looking for in this game just because of the warrior scout power and potential for Malian.
Yeah, so far so good. It's an identical build. You can see at the top of the screen. It's the same amount of villagers, everybody just focused on food, but B looks like he has a bit of a head start when it comes to gathering said food, so that's going to translate into a couple of seconds advantage, but that's all that there is gonna be. Now the bigger question is whether we're going to see Mansa Quarry from both players, or maybe one player going for Saharan Trade Network, and it's gonna be the Mansa Quarry from both, so once again, identical builds, DeMusliM committing one less villager for building the landmark though.
Yeah, and that's going to mean a bit slower going up to feudal age, but in general, things are looking pretty equal. And that's what we expected, right, with Malians. That players will probably keep it the same way until feudal, where we might see some divergence in strategy. Quick scout at the front reveals that TC is open, so everything's being built up behind it here for B. DeMusliM getting some info for himself, scouting around. Also, he wants to get the info on which side B is starting to get his wood up, and now he's going to see his opponent is in the feudal age. He's not far behind that, and woodline should be pretty comfortable here for B once he gets done with those straggler trees around the TC.
Yeah, as you said, Demu tried to spot which side the B goes for his first wood line, but B is still chopping stragglers, so Demu's gonna have to wait a little bit for that, and that's going to be a fast stable coming up by Demu. Same thing for B, so no surprise, it is going to be professional scouts coming in from both players eventually. Now, this is where it gets interesting. The two deer spots for B are split up, whereas for DeMusliM, they're both on the same side. So that's going to make it a little bit more streamlined for DeMusliM, I would think. But it also means that if B plays aggressive and he's just there to harass, then DeMusliM isn't going to be able to access either.
Harassment's going to be extra important for it. And how much are you dedicating onto the stables? Starting off production here, B, and an exactly mirror thing is happening on the other side for DeMusliM. He is one military unit behind, but otherwise the economies are looking pretty equal as we look at things. that one might play. It depends on who takes the initiative, really. If B is the one pushing on the other side, then Muslim will not have to worry about the tiny discrepancy in pure count. But because of how open our map is here on Dry Arabia, you really have to spread out. And in the early game, having to face concentrations of Cav is going to be very detrimental, which is exactly what DeMusliM is able to scout out and thankfully respond pretty quickly to B's aggression with his own warrior scouts. It's going to pull back to his base, going to have the TC to help him out, and B is going to get the information. It's the power of the warrior scout. You have massive line of sight, so you can easily dodge around your opponents. You might have to use those forests to block out line of sight more efficiently.
Yeah, now, DeMusliM went for a different direction than B did. B went for professional scout straight away, the tech is just now finishing. Whereas for DeMusliM, he decided not to go for that. He's just going for wheelbarrow, and I think he's going to double down on the scout numbers. We'll just try to prevent fearing in the carcasses. He doesn't have professional scouts himself, so he needs to prevent the carcasses from being brought in.
Look, just wasting no time going in, picking up the extra carcasses. Yes, it's going to slow you down, but that's not really the problem. B is close to his base, so he just wants to push the Muslim back for a moment so he can drop off that extra food and then get back into the fight. And being so close to your initial rally point of base gives B an extra bit of flexibility that he just really doesn't need to fear a straight-up engagement just because of how distant Muslim's rally point is. And the expansion has gone pretty much in the same way for both of our players, going up and setting in their pit mine.
Yeah, right now, if we take a look, the first batch of deer has been brought in. And that's concerning for the Muslim because he didn't go for professional scouts himself. And on the other side, we do have survival techniques in, plus the deer carcasses. So now the food eco for B is going to be substantially better than what the Muslim has. And that is the first step towards a snowball here. So Demu needs to make something happen because otherwise, especially when the second batch of deer comes in, his eco is going to start falling behind.
Yeah, and the problem is, can he actually fight this? Because you're so close to your opponent's base, they're going to be rallying scouts pretty efficiently and pretty quickly. It's going to take you longer. B also had an extra advantage early on, but now, at least in terms of pure manpower on the field, advantage is going to go slightly to the Muslim. But playing around a TC is always very tricky. An extra bit of food has been ferried, and despite all of this, the Muslim has kept up a pretty decent food rate, around 650. But B is going to have an extra bit to come up real quick now with the extra carcasses that have been dropped off by said professional scouts.
Yeah, it's crazy to look at the scout numbers over here. 18 scouts out there for the Muslim, 15 for B. Now, B is going for a couple of archers over here. He's the one to blink first. Maybe he was expecting a couple of Donsos to be added because otherwise I don't necessarily see why he would start making archers against light cavalry. But he's going to just start mixing in those archers. For the time being, it's just one. Whereas for the Muslim, his game plan seems very simple. He's just going straight up on the cavalry department, and he's doing so by going for the cow play. He actually has 2 males back at home making cows with.
Well, wait a sec. In the meantime, there's been one of those scouts that has gone in from B, trying to get close to the Muslim's base, just so he can scout about and see, has my opponent dedicated themselves into the archery range? You might have been able to spot that just because of the extra line of sight that you get with the scout. There we go. Walling is going to go up. This is going to protect you from the archers if indeed he was able to spot the ranges on his opponent, but he's going to be able to drop some of his own. The Muslim scouting that out. So keeping up the mirror, but in different timings. Going to split and slip through his opponent's defenses, but might just force a big fight as the wall has come up on the other side. The Muslim's going to have to run away on the other side of the forest and see that it also has been walled off. So you're stuck, you're forced into a fight, and you need to take as much of it as possible. But the rally point for B is literally right around the corner. Trying to fight inside of the woods here for the Muslim. He's on the edge of the map. This is not looking too good. He has to find a way to escape, but you're gonna lose a few of your scouts in this spot. Look at the waves, man! This is Formula 1 in horse form.
Oh, he's walling him in. I don't think that DeMusliM has seen those walls coming up. He doesn't know that he's completely trapped now. He's going up to Castle Age, but he needs to keep this army alive and get the Castle Age upgrade before taking this fight ideally. So, oh, it's gonna be a lot of ring around the roses being run over here before he takes that engagement.
Yeah, I appreciate the reinforcements being killed off, but that is just a beautiful set of walls that has been set in, and it's going to force the Muslim to keep on running. The one thing he is doing well here is that he's allowing himself to age up without needing to worry about a fight, because how long is this cav really going to be helpful for him? He's already set himself to transition away from the cav and into archers, was forcing B to overinvest in warrior scouts. But there's the fight. It's going to happen in just a moment here, but yeah, there's just a few scouts lost. Age up has already happened. The Muslim looking good, but B has yet to click up.
Oh, this is a terrible fight. He's taking that engagement before the upgrade comes in. Most of the scouts go down, and this is terrifying for the Muslim. He's gonna get up to Castle Age. Well, he's up to Castle Age already, but his army is devastated, and it's not like B is that much behind, and when B gets up, he's going to have 30 scouts to work with. The plan was really good for the Muslim over here. He actually beat B to Castle Age by a massive margin, but he wasn't able to keep the scouts alive long enough, and now, when B gets to Castle Age, his army is going to be much superior.
He's still keeping B's army preoccupied. That's something that I'm really impressed about, is that B is not really taking the time to counterattack and really force his advantage on his opponent, whilst he has I guess, a massive pure army lead before the Muslim can really take control of his Castle Age eco. He's going to push in, try to raid, do a bit of damage, walk off, try to delay the upgrade of the Furimba garrison to go into Castle Age, but it's just a wild goose chase. That advantage, though, in pure manpower is slowly but surely being closed. But B is just keeping up production. He is just gonna hold down that warrior scout key and just keep it rolling.
It's so hard to judge this game because for a long time I felt like B has the upper hand with the professional scouts plus survival techniques hunt, but the Muslim, he actually had the lead. I was wrong about my assumption. Now, for a long time, the Muslim was playing with scouts exclusively. Now he's making a hard switch into archers, which seems awkward at the first glance, especially against that many scouts, and especially against the sofas coming in. But don't forget, when you have poison arrows on those archers, they will not be that much... They will not have that much many... They will not have a lot of problems with armor. That's what I was trying to say here. So, this stack switch could still work out for Demu.
So there it is. That's a big mass of archers that has just come up. But is it going to be enough to hold off? That's your brain on the English really functioning in a situation like this. Look at the amount of damage that they're doing, I gotta say. Despite being just archers, they're doing a lot of work to handle their Malian warrior scout opponents that have to run back, even dropping the deers, because you don't want to slow yourself down. And suddenly that tech switch might be exactly what is needed. Overcommitting on the scouts, but maybe you find the right opportunity and flank around your opponent, and suddenly your archers are surrounded and cleared up pretty quickly. However, that manpower advantage, I gotta say again, has slipped to the Muslims' side. He's allowed himself enough time to invest in his eco, while up in the meantime, whilst he was going that whole wild goose chase in B's base, and now he's got proper tech and able to use up his early castle age that bought him an extra 2 minutes above when B was able to age up.
That's a crazy amount of archers on the field. He's up to 40 of them. Poison arrows not yet in though, and this might be a premature fight without that technology. A lot of sofas in here for B, and he's gonna have to fall back, especially with the javelin throwers also being in there. He's lucky if B lets him get away.
Demo, is that really worth it? not too sure. Now all those archers are open to aggression. Like you said, premature maybe on the assault. Give it an extra 30 seconds. You would have gotten those poison arrows, and they're going to set in just now. But is it too little, too late with the amount of cav that's left off? Very micro-intensive to try to walk back and fire into your opponent's cav, and you definitely do not want to lose your mass of archers. Still very far away from your base, trying to thin down your opponent's army. But that cav, it's just, you can lose it at this point as long as you're doing damage on the other side, which is exactly what B is doing, thinning out the herd as they go. More and more archers falling down, javelins right behind them to continue with any reinforcements that might come up from DeMusliM. And now B has crossed in advantage manpower. Finally gonna get to the base, but with whatever is left of that army, it might not be enough. Pushing right into the opponent's cav, trying to delay and save up whatever's left from those archers. But now you're at your opponent's base. What does B do? He pulls back and he plays his advantage in manpower and in economy.
Yeah, this was some really good engagements for B. DeMusliM, as we discussed, he probably took a little bit of a premature fight. Maybe he didn't expect that many javelin throwers or sofas to be in there. And if it wasn't for the sofas, DeMusliM probably wins that fight, but there were enough sofas for B with imported armor to push it back, with DeMusliM not having poison arrows, and now DeMusliM is struggling for map control. He's got a crazy gold income. We're talking about almost 2,000 gold per minute, so he can turn that into a lot of army using the Framework Garrison, but he's now deprived of map control, possibly having his left-hand side pit mine exposed. And even though he walled off the right side, I think there is a critical mass of sofas, which allows you to just run past the town center and dive straight into the eco.
True. And in this case, there might be one option here for DeMusliM, which is hold on as long as you can, because you've lost the critical mass that you have. Now he's gone up with his archers, but B has already surpassed 16 extra in his military count. And the sofas make it a bit of a cushy fight, to say the least. In this case, javelins are also going to aid against that mass of archers in the back, and trying to force an engagement here might not be the best decision for DeMusliM, but honestly, he's kind of strapped for ideas.
Yeah, it's not like he has a lot of choices over here. He's going to have to move out of his base eventually, especially because, let's not forget, one of the forests that he has to work with is on the front. So he's going to start running low on wood at some point, and at the very latest, at that time, he's going to have to move out. Now, he has sofas in there, he's got a decent amount of archers, so he could take a decent engagement over here, possibly.
Can he get the surround around his opponent's cav? It's going to happen at some point with the amount of military that just is put on the ground by B. The archers are doing quite a bit of work, though, in the back, firing off into the sofas, but they're just tanking as many hits as they can. Javs are also getting closer and closer to being wiped out. This is actually not too bad for DeMusliM. He's thinning out the numbers, but that cav front line that he has, that's really saving his time, is it's going to run out, and Vills are also being attacked in the meantime. The decision has to be made now for DeMusliM. Do I continue and put up the pressure, or do I fall back? Turns out those Vills, extra important. That's your biggest advantage, having that bit of extra economy of finally the army is going to rendezvous. But what do you do as B? You take your cav and you just keep it rolling. Keep pushing through your opponent's now very thin eco.
Yeah, Demu needs that gold mine now. He has eaten what he has inside his base, so he's gonna have to move towards that one. And he did a great job securing this. He took the best fight possible, and given the circumstances, his position looks pretty admirable. Now, looking at B, let's see what he's doing back at home, because he's been slowly massing cavalry, and yeah, that's the case. He's up to 22 sofas. He didn't show most of them to DeMusliM, so right now for Demu, whose army is almost exclusively archers, a large mix of sofas and javelin throwers could be a nightmare to face.
Surprisingly, the archers from Demo actually didn't do too bad against the javelins, but that's just because they have enough of a critical mass and so many of B's sofas had been taken down earlier on in the engagement when they just clashed with the Muslims' massive cav. Now, Demo does not have that massive cavalry anymore and is being raided in the meantime. They're trying to snipe off one of his extra pit mines. They're just set on the sides, giving him the extra income to fight into, or keep into the fight. Sacred Site's been capped here, but the mass has definitely been reached by B. He's going to show off all of the sofas as they push into their opponent's cavalry, trying to thin them out ASAP. The javelins need to get a bit closer to deal with the archers, but very good control from DeMusliM. He's closer and closer back to his base. The poison arrows are doing work also against his opponent's cav, but again, is it the right amount of units that Demo even has in this case? He's putting all of his vills on the extra gold just so he can keep up any production.
Yeah, that's a crazy amount of villagers on the gold mine. I think it's even oversaturated. So not all villagers might be working efficiently there. And I guess the concern for him is that he doesn't have a front line. Any damage that he takes, it's going to be on the archers from the javelin throwers. Whereas for himself, he needs to focus down those sofas. And while he's doing so, the javelin throwers are picking off the archers from the distance. So these are much more sustainable fights right now for B. And I also love how he's mixing in some monks to heal up the injured sofas.
You can heal them up. You can also use the monks to snipe out your opponent's cav, because what we're seeing from DeMusliM is that he crashes his cav into B's and then uses the archers in the back and micros them constantly to keep them away from the javelins that would be able to clear the archers properly. That's what kept DeMusliM's archer mass alive for so long, and would argue way too long given the advantage that B has had after that fateful fight where DeMusliM's cav was left stuck behind enemy lines with no way out. But that is an impressive mass of archers.
Yeah, no siege on B's side, but he's got a remarkable amount of cavalry, and I feel like we are reaching the point where B could flirt with the idea of just diving straight into the eco of DeMusliM and saying, okay, if you're out there on the field with your archers, I will just use my mobility, destroy your eco. And if you think about it, if B has 30 archers of his own plus 20 javelin throwers, that's good enough to hold off DeMusliM's archer force back at home. He can detach the cavalry and dive straight into the eco. He didn't do just that, but the option still remains there for him.
I'm very glad that we're out of the, hey, by this point they would have 15 Springolds and just firing at one another kind of meta. So that's a good time, because it means that both players have to constantly maneuver around the map and expand whilst also trying to attack and defend. This is something that I love from what DeMusliM is doing, just trying to stay alive in the game. It's forcing him out of position, yes, but it's what he needs to survive, and at least is giving space for him to keep up his production. But that's an extra 15 units that B has in the meantime. There's a quick spot, and unfortunately caught out of position. There's a few cav that'll be lost for B before the rest of his javelins can arrive and actually support the archers. You don't want to play around that stone. It'll cut your army in half and it'll really make microing a bit more difficult. But now that the entire army has rallied and you're pushed against the gold and the woodline in the back, this might be the game-ending or winning fight for either one of the players. B is crashing on those cav, the archers in the back firing away, but there is a critical mass of javelins and archers from B that are pushing forward, and at some point you're going to be cornered again. We've seen it before, cornered with cav, and now you're cornered with archers. So much just trying to wrap around you, and it's going to be closed. That gap is going to be set in. DeMusliM does not have much to play with, and he'll get knocked out on map 1. Our Miramolian's going to be.
What a game here. Just comes down to little details as we expected. DeMusliM having a better costlage timing, but the scouts getting wiped out just before he could get the upgrades in. Then poison arrows being a couple of seconds too late. And after that, the escalation thanks to that from B. One thing we didn't have the time to discuss is that B leveraged that amazing engagement he took initially against the archers of DeMusliM and turned that into 5 relics under his control, 3 sacred sites for some time. He had a crazy amount of passive gold income from that, and that's something that helped him just build up those forces that he had in the end. And at the end of the day, a lot came down to him having an army composition as compared to the Muslims' very much one-dimensional army that we have had.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we were talking about, the swap over to, I guess, well, away from just your early scout